right, what's going on, big dog? So today, I just wanted to do kind of a follow-up video to my top 5 favorite games of all time and do my top 5 least favorite or worst games of all time. So again, just a quick start to the video. This list isn't like the worst selling or the worst of all time, just because I think that list has been made so many times. And this is going to be more games that honestly, I don't think are these awful, terrible games. Like maybe their sales were still good, but the game itself was it just left such a bitter taste in not only my mouth, but millions of other people in a lot of these cases. They were games that you pick up and you play and you just go, what the hell am I doing? Why am I playing this just garbage? Before we get started, I want to do a couple dishonorable mentions before we get to my bottom 5 games of all time. And the first one is going to be Anthem. So Anthem obviously was a huge, just everybody was excited for this game. It looked really good. The flying was really fun. That was really the only good thing about it. But we all know game was riddled with bugs, riddled with issues. I personally had a lot of connection issues and wasn't able to actually even play the game that often. And after a while, I just completely uninstalled it and was sick of it because I would get stuck doing weird animations or my character would start gliding and the immersion breaking was terrible. The game loop itself was not fun by any stretch of the imagination. A lot of go here, go there, kill this, kill that, come back. It's not the greatest, and the battles were by no means like hard. There really wasn't a challenge to the game. It was just a big gotcha game that really I think EA just put out to try to make a quick buck on. But I know a lot of people put that game kind of on their bottom 5 or the top 5 worst games, but to me, it just doesn't crack it, mainly because I didn't play a ton of it, but it's definitely up there. So with that out of the way, number 5 for me is going to be Evolve. So Evolve is a game that I was somebody who got way too excited about it. I saw this awesome graphic, super cool, like Monster Hunter game where you got to be the monster if you wanted to. I, at the time, was a little naive. I kind of thought every game just came with a campaign and wasn't really aware of the whole like multiplayer only type of stuff. But once I kind of figured out what it was, it still seemed interesting to me and I want to be part of it. And when I got the game, I gotta say it was extremely disappointing. It took me forever to find matches. It took me forever to get my friends involved. Like if we tried partying up or teaming up, we had issues joining lobbies and all sorts of junk like that. The monsters weren't that interesting. They kind of tried re-releasing the game almost with Evolve Stage 2 and adding in a few more modes, adding in a few new monsters, adding in a couple agents or whatever you want to call them, I believe, as well. And at that point, though, it was just too late. Too many people had been burned by it already. Like, the servers weren't great. A lot of disconnecting, a lot of lagging. Just basically the game was a good starter for what we have now for like Dead by Daylight and things like that. And it did kind of have this ground base for these games to eventually succeed, but they just missed on every way, shape, or form when it came to that formula, and that is why it is sitting at my number 5. All right, guys, coming in at number 4 for me is going to be Call of Duty Ghosts. So Call of Duty Ghosts was the first Call of Duty that I found myself actively not wanting to play. So I was a huge COD fan for the longest time. I played every COD game all the way up until Ghosts. I was nonstop. As soon as I got home from practice or school or anything like that, I was hopping on. I was playing COD with my friends. I was playing COD with just by myself, just trying to rank up and get all the camos and doing ranked play and stuff when they did that in Black Ops 2 or League Play, whatever it was called. But Call of Duty Ghosts generally just killed the game for me. The campaign in it is notoriously not the greatest, but it's also not the worst. Like going back on it today, it's not the worst ever. Of course, it ends with a dumb cliffhanger, and I know that upset a lot of people. But at the time, all of their games were ending on dumb cliffhangers because they kind of just planned on continuing the series. But Ghost was received so poorly. Today, it's still not a finished story. The multiplayer is the big kicker here. The multiplayer, and I'm including the multiplayer in this one heavily because that's what a lot of people buy Call of Duty for. Obviously, the campaigns are usually, decent. They're never anything amazing unless you're talking about the most recent one, which we'll get to that later. But the multiplayer in Call of Duty is a big part of their community. It's a huge part, if not the main part, of their entire franchise. And Ghost was terrible. The time to kill was incredibly fast. The kill streaks were terrible. There was a few kind of overpowered ones, like the attack dogs were pretty nuts, but other than that, they weren't anything incredible. They were pretty poor. The UAV, don't get me started on that. Those were terrible. Instead of having like a UAV that covered the whole map, they only covered certain areas, and you had to have like 2 or 3 of them to actually cover the whole map. It was super dumb. super irritating. They kind of just made the game just a camp festival, and everyone just sat in corners using the thermal scope forever because that was the only strategy that worked that wasn't going to get you killed a million times a game. So it literally came down to who saw who first. And all the maps were super dark and gray, so the thermal scope just came in and allowed you to actually see people. Because normally everybody's in black because you're in a war zone, and all the maps were dark and gray and ugly. So just a not fun multiplayer at all. Super crappy. I mean, so many of the guns were either super bad or like way too strong, especially with the low time to kill. But it was such a bad game. It still leaves a bad taste in my mouth, and it's a big reason why I don't play COD like I used to. All right, guys, so coming in at number 3 for me is actually going to be Fallout 76. So Fallout 76, I pushed off for playing for a long time. I wasn't the biggest fan of the Fallout 4. It was good. The story was solid, and the exploration and customization wasn't bad. I really enjoyed the open world, and overall, it wasn't the worst game, but it just wasn't as fun for me as, say, like New Vegas or even Fallout 3. I actually even really enjoy the old ones as well, going back to them from time to time. But Fallout 76, I know they fixed it a little bit in recent years, but man, was that game brutal to play. From not being able to connect to servers to losing items that you would have in your inventory and then they just disappear, or being killed and not being able to respawn. All sorts of crazy bugs and glitches in the game just made it impossible to play. It's super empty open world that there wasn't a lot to do in other than run around and loot stuff. It kind of felt like a really crappy indie open world survival game. I really don't know how else to describe it. This game is the sole reason why I am very concerned about Bethesda fucking up The Elder Scrolls 6. This game gives me a huge worry because I have a feeling that there are going to be microtransactions and dumb shit like that for The Elder Scrolls 6, just because people are kind of starting to go back to Fallout 76. I recently tried to, before I was making this video, I was kind of like, well, was that game really as bad as I remember? And me and a couple buddies tried booting it up, and it still had incredible lag when using a mouse and keyboard. So if I used a controller, it was super accurate. Whenever I wanted to turn, it would turn. Whenever I wanted to jump, it would jump. But on my PC, it was almost like whenever I would press V on my keyboard or click to shoot, it was like a second delay. I don't know what that was. It was super dumb. Like even turning, like I would turn my mouse and then I'd have to wait for my character to turn. It was terrible, not fun. Still one of the worst games I've ever played. Super boring, super uninteresting, and super fucking buggy. All right, so coming in at number 2 for me, and this one is a recent one, and this one recently hit this top 2. I was going to put it at number 1, but I think everyone's kind of said what they need to say about it, and the game overall isn't really a full game, so I just kind of feel like I shouldn't put it at number 1, but it's the new Modern Warfare 3. So Modern Warfare 3 has a long history. I'm sure most of you have heard about it at this point. And basically, if you don't know how it works, it was sold as a new game for Call of Duty, right? It was the new remaster, or not really remaster, but it was a new remake of the original Modern Warfare 3. And they hyped it up to be like that. They hyped up an open worlds campaign, and they hyped up a new Warzone map, and they hyped up multiplayer and all these new fun things that were supposed to come back, and none of them did. Warzone, to me, is in the buggiest state it's ever been in. There are more cheaters, there are more hackers, there are more degens in the games than I have ever run into in my life. The game does run a little better, I will give it that. Like, Modern Warfare 2 ran incredibly poorly on my computer, and mine is very strong. This game runs actually quite well on my PC, but there are just so many things in Warzone and in Call of Duty now that are just terrible. Not to mention that they basically published it as a game, but if you look at it through Steam, when you buy it, it's actually listed as a DLC. So a lot of people weren't able to refund this hunk of crap, even though they paid full price for it. Like, it's still a full price game, but it's a DLC, and it's a shitty one at that. It kind of added a few new maps, it added a few new guns, but overall, it's the exact same game, it's the exact same crap, except just a hell of a lot worse. They lied about getting ranked play out on time, they lied about fixing all of the cheating and all this other crap, and they're trying all these different tactics on ways to get cheaters out of their games, and none of them work. But you bet your ass that every day and every other day at the very least, there's new shit in the shop for you to buy, because that is all they care about. This game is a mess. The multiplayer is terrible. The Warzone is the worst that I have played personally. And don't even get me started on the campaign. The campaign is like 4 hours at its best, and it's all just a bunch of fetch quests with shitty, crappy, like, cinematics that aren't great. They don't add anything to the story. It's not fun. It's not interesting. It's a waste of your time. The zombies mode is crap. Like, everything about this is just a big pile of crap. That's really how I can explain it. But let's move on to number one. So number one holds a spot in my heart because this was a game I was extremely excited to get my hands on. And like a lot of people, was extremely, extremely disappointed. So at number one for me, guys, this is a game that I think most of us knew was going to be bad, but I just don't think we realized how crappy that would be. And it is, of course, Gollum. So Gollum, kind of like the new Skull Island Kong game that came out, they're both really quick cash grabs. However, the difference between the two games is that Skull Island Kong or Kong Skull Island, that game is bad, but it is clearly just a quick turnaround, asset flip, AI generated piece of junk. It is very clearly that. They published it as such. They didn't charge you full price for the game. Gollum, on the other hand, seemed to actually have a lot of time and a lot of money put into it, but you can't fucking tell. From game-breaking bugs to mission-ending quests that make you start all over again because the game decided that, you know what, you actually can't finish this quest now, to absolutely horrific graphics that even make PlayStation 2 graphics look like they would burn out a 4090. The game is just a complete mess. It's clearly just trying to live off the title, which is The Lord of the Rings, and everything about this game is terrible. I'm 99% sure everyone has heard about how terrible this game is, especially at this point. It is easily the worst game I've ever played. I didn't even finish it. I got through like 2 or 3 levels. I was thinking about doing a whole playthrough and uploading it just full length because the game's only about 4 or 5 hours if you are playing on the easier difficulties, at least from what I've watched. But there are so few people that have actually sat and finished this hunk of crap game. It is easily the worst game I've ever played. I figured that it was going to be bad, and I wasn't exactly surprised that it was bad, but I was just surprised at how terrible and like how they would even consider releasing a game plays and looks and operates like it does. I mean, it doesn't do any of those things, but that's how bad it was. It doesn't even function half the time. But anyways, guys, if you did enjoy the video, remember, please leave a like, comment, and of course subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you didn't like the video, leave a dislike with a comment why. Let me know what games you guys want to put on this list, and let me know what other games you guys think deserve to be noted as the worst of all time. But thank you guys for your time, and until the next video, guys, Godspeed.